welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think you guys might know each other. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I was pleased to support the Secretary was because he came from in North Dakota, a large town, but another famously a smaller community in rural America, and would understand the importance of federalism and the importance of a partnership where the federal government yields to the local and state governments as opposed to the other way around. That said, I want to add my appreciation to you, Mr. Chairman, of course, to Ranking Member Capito. I have a saying, Mr. Secretary, that if you want to get big things done, you call on the firm of Carper, Capito, Cardin, and Cramer, and we'll get it put together. But anyway, thank you. But I do want to dig in on the federalism point a little bit and the memorandum, because it did create not just some confusion, but concern by people out there who are going, wait a minute, we were told that these smart people, simplified the process, and yet we're getting this sort of complicating language. And I think with regard to the exact language that we specifically excluded from the bill to see it turn up in even a memorandum or guidance as opposed to, specific regulation, it almost appears designed to create some of that confusion. I hope that's not the case, but that's how it was taken. And when I listened to you describe to Senator Capito, I guess explained why it appears, it sounded to me a little bit like you were arguing against the spirit of the law by using the letter of the law. And that adds confusion, because we were very specific. And I want to get specifically to the issue of the single agency or the one agency rule, which we codified. And you said, well, you're working to, in one of the questions, or one of the answers, you said, we're working to implement it. And what causes me to chuckle there is, don't get me wrong, you have a big job, and it's not as simple as I'd like it to be, but it's not as complicated as the bureaucracy likes it to be either. The whole point of one agency is to simplify, to make it easy to implement, right? So let me ask you a specific question about funding. Does this guidance imply, whether intentionally or unintentionally, imply a set of priorities that will be used as guidance in the decision of the agency when it comes to, say, awarding grants or some other funding? And you can answer the broader question in the context of that specific one if you'd like.
Sure. So what I'd say is it certainly reflects our priorities, and when it comes to discretionary grants, for example, as provided for within the law, some of the things we've talked about: safety, state of good repair, economic strength, resilience. These are national priorities, administration priorities, and things that will certainly guide me within the parameters of the law in our decisions and our approach to the competitive grants. With regard to the formulas, again, ultimately the states are making these calls, right? And we recognize that and support that. We also, of course, want to help them get to places where they might not even have known some of the flexibilities that exist. And I'll give you an example that ties back to what Senator Cardin was raising with transportation alternatives, right? There are a number of authorities and flexibilities within the Surface Transportation Block Grant that I think many states would like to take advantage of, but it might be helpful for us to remind them that they have access to that, because that's evolved over time. But ultimately, the left and right boundaries here are the letter of the law. That's all that I can work with in deciding what to do in implementing these formula programs. With regard to the one federal decision, having been a local leader and waded through these processes, let me just restate my commitment to making sure that administrative inefficiency is never accepted as a reason for any of those processes to take longer than they could. And if we can beat those targets, that's even better.
Well, especially, I think, thank you for that, I think in this era of pretty hyperinflation, where the supply side of the economic formula has been shorted, let's get after it real quickly, and I appreciate your commitment to that. And we need to do our part as well in passing appropriations. I know we're all committed to that. Please tell me we're going to get that done. But I'll just end with this. Federalism really does work, and the absence of prohibition is not a license to do it ever the bureaucracy wants. And I think that's how it appears to some people. I hope that your clarification is comfort, because my advice to my governor and to my state, and frankly, the 5-state coalition of the North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho that work together on these policies, it's a really big footprint out there. My advice to them is to ignore, frankly, the memo, because the 5 of them know exactly what to do in rural America. But thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks for those questions, and especially for giving us what was the four the law firm? What was that?
I called it. I didn't say law firm.
Oh,
I was
okay.
specific to not say that.
Okay. Well, we do make laws.
The consulting firm of Carper, Capital, Carden, and Cramer. I think we could do big things together.
That's great.
Yeah. So far, anyway, we've been pretty good.
I oftentimes, and I know probably all do this, I love, like, when I visit senior centers or places like that in Delaware, and I meet couples that have been married for, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and I almost always ask them what's the key to a long marriage, and the best answer, actually repeated by a number of people, the 2 C's, and communicate and compromise.
There you go.
And we're pretty good at that on this committee. And it gets us to a third C, which is consensus, and that's what we're trying to do.
That's how you get unanimous votes.
There you go. Thanks. All right, Senator Markley, not a C, but very much a consensus builder on his own.
No, Mr. Chairman, I feel very much excluded from